Evolution, Chapter 32, Academic. Jen called ahead to the Plumber Academy, and the evacuation of the younger cadets and less experienced trainees was well underway by the time the station came into sight, which was good because they had maybe an hour's head start on Kevin, if they were lucky. Jen nodded to the plumbers working on evacuating the academy and stepped over to the Magister in charge, an old friend of Max's. "Magister Connerch." Jen nodded to him, and he nodded back, eyes steely. "I wish we were meeting under better circumstances, Miss Tennyson." He nodded to Gwen. "Miss Tennyson. We've evacuated all non-combatants. We're working on the younger cadets and trainees, but we've had a lot of volunteers to stay behind and help." Jen shook her head. "They can help by getting out of the way. Kevin isn't playing anymore. I won't have anyone's death on my conscience." Argit piped up behind her. "That includes me, right?" Jen glared at him. "Stick him in a cell for his own safety?" Two plumbers nodded and took Argit away. Magister Connerch frowned, the frill on top of his head flexing almost nervously. "You're sure you can beat him? We've heard rumors about how much power he's got." Jen cut him off with a look as a few remaining cadets rushed past them towards the transports. "Just get your people out as quickly as you can." Connerch stiffened. "With all due respect, not all of us are leaving. He was plumber. That makes him plumber business. You're a specialist, Miss Tennyson. I respect that. I respect the hell out of your granddad. He's a good man. But we won't stand aside. This is what we train for." Jen glared at him. "He will kill you. He's come too close to doing so recently not to. He's not after you or your rookies. He's after Argit and me. Your people are going to get in the way." "Miss Tennyson, this is our job." Jen sighed. This argument was getting them nowhere, and Kevin could be here any minute. "Fine, the fully ranked plumbers can stay. I want everyone else off this station as soon as possible." Magister Connerch nodded to her and went to make her orders a reality. Gwen stared at her cousin. She'd never seen her so in charge of a situation before. "Grandpa's right. You'd make the best of the plumbers," she said offhandedly. Jen pulled a face as they scouted the base for the best place to make their stand. "Too many rules." Gwen managed a small smile. "And yet you're barking orders with the best of them." Jen rolled her eyes at her cousin, and for a moment they weren't preparing to wage war on the close friend. They were facing another innocuous threat, but it was just like old times. Then it wasn't, as the alarms started blaring and the speaker system came to life. "All remaining plumbers to battle stations. This is not a drill. Station breach on the observation deck." Jen grabbed the nearest plumber by the collar, no mean feat, as he was about 2 feet taller than her. "Which way to the observation deck?" she shouted over the alarm. "Down the hall. Take the first right, and then take the first left, then a right. You can't miss it." He huffed out. She released the Loboan and raced off. Gwen, hot on her heels. Scout raced off to his station. He and Rook were covering the escape of a few remaining cadets. "You're never gonna believe who I just saw," Scout crowed excitedly as he slipped into the cockpit seat. Rook taking the controls. "Now is not the time, Scout," Rook said as he pulled the freighter full of students out of the satellite. If the Vreedles hadn't intervened, the fight might have been more decisive, which wasn't necessarily a good thing. Jen had been forced to take their nuke grenade out of the base as Ultimate Echo, using sound waves to control the explosion until she could get it far enough away from the base so that no one would be harmed. It was a very good thing that Sonarians had incredible lung capacities, or she might not have made it back to the nearest airlock she could find. She pounded on it, and one of the plumbers let her back in, but she was too late. Kevin had fled, Argit laying seemingly dead on the ground. Gwen was pulling herself to her feet, tears streaming down her face. Jen stepped over to Argit. She frowned down at him. Magister Connerch frowned. "You don't need to be here for this, Miss Tennyson." "Don't patronize me, Magister. Argit, get up." They glanced at her. The Magister looked a little sad. "He's gone." He said it softly, but Jen kicked Argit in the side gently and spoke again. "Kevin's gone. You can quit with the charade now." Gwen and the Magister stared as Argent peeked an eye open and breathed out a sigh of relief. "How did you know he could do that?" Magister Connarch asked, a bit amazed. "Please, how could a person as annoying as Argent survive this long without being able to do that?" Argent pouted. "I'm hurt, Jenny, genuinely hurt. If I hadn't turned off my pulse, Kevin would have kept going. I did this as much for him as I did for me." Jen rolled her eyes. "Take him into custody?" Magister Connarch nodded, and a few of the remaining plumbers stepped forward and took Argent away. Jen thought they looked familiar, but as she turned to ask Gwen, she found her cousin was standing at the edge of the observation deck watching the stars. She quick-stepped up the stairs and slowly stepped up to her cousin, letting her brush away the tears on her face. "I reached him. For a second there, I reached him. I can save him." Jen sighed. "I know you want to believe that, but he literally only left because he thought Argent was dead. Who's he going after next? Can you tell me with absolute certainty that we'll get there before him this time, too? Gwen, look at me." Bloodshot green met determined green as the redhead met her eyes. "Some people can't be saved. Some people are too far gone." "He could have killed me, Jen. He was inches away, but he stopped. You have to let me save him." Jen shook her head. "You get a chance, but he hurts anyone else, and he loses that chance. He's out for blood, Gwen. Do you really think he's ever gonna stop?" Gwen glanced back at the glass, into the void. "I know you love him. I'm not asking you to put him down. And I'm not asking you to forgive me for doing it. But you need to realize that it's necessary." Jen glanced out of the glass. "I'll meet you at the rust bucket in a few minutes." She walked away, leaving her cousin alone with her thoughts. Gwen really didn't want to be alone with her thoughts right now, but neither did she want to be with the cold, efficient hero Jen was becoming. There would be no coming back for either of them if this went badly. If Kevin actually managed to kill someone, she knew, deep down, she would lose him for good. That small smolder of the man she knew in his eyes doused by spilled blood. But on the other side, if Jen did what she believed was necessary, she would step over a line she'd been so careful to avoid since she was 10 years old. She would never be the same person again. As cold as she acted, Gwen knew she was hurting too. It was plastered all over her aura. Kevin had been her best friend. She didn't want to have to do what might be necessary, but if it proved to be, she knew Gwen wouldn't be able to. Gwen shook as she remembered the last thing Kevin had said to her. "The only reason you're still alive is because of what you used to mean to me." Used to. Did that mean that the insanity had driven his love for her out of his heart? Jen wouldn't hesitate if Kevin tried to kill her again. Honestly, it was lucky for Kevin that the cadets had fired a nuke and distracted Jen. If she'd seen how he'd attacked her, she would have snapped on the spot and everything would have come out differently. She had to find a way to set this right. There had to be a way. She straightened and headed for the rust bucket, her resolve hardened. 2 of the people she loved teetered on a knife's edge, and she had to be the one to pull them back.